Hello, everybody, and welcome to Journalism in the Movies, Ep.2. With me today is Andrew Bailey, the Pulse editor and junior multi-platform journalism major of the BG News. How are you doing today, Andrew?
Doing good. How are you, Vaughn?
Practically perfect. Now, today we're continuing with our Jake Gyllenhaal experience in journalism in the movies by talking about a beautiful film about an alien learning how to do journalism in Los Angeles. And of course, that movie is Nightcrawler. So, Andrew, you'd seen this before?
Yeah, this is my second time seeing it.
Yeah, that's the same. I think I saw it when it came out. Was it 2013, I think?
2014,
2014. Yeah, I think I saw it when it came out, and like everybody else, I was thoroughly impressed and terrified by the movie. By anybody who isn't familiar, obviously I was being facetious. It's not about an alien. But I think you could be easily deceived into thinking it was, considering Jake Gyllenhaal in this movie plays a psychopathic con man, I guess is the word you would use, who becomes a ambulance chaser, in that he delves into the world of broadcast journalism through recording people in the worst moments of their lives. So I guess we'll just start off. Do you like talking about whether or not we like the movie or not? And we can start with you. I'll start with you, Andrew.
Well, I loved the movie. Something I've always experienced on second viewings of movies is I begin to appreciate it more because I know what's coming, so I can, look out for what I didn't really catch the first time. And something that stuck out to me in particular upon my second viewing was Bill Paxton's performance. Because
oh, right, yeah.
He was a very underrated actor, and when he would say "brah" after every time he was talking to Jake Gyllenhaal's character, I just couldn't I had to stifle a laugh. It was so funny. But he was they both have very different personalities for the Nightcrawler job that they had. Yeah,
I think you kind of. What I was thinking about when I was watching it is that he shows up in basically the first scene, one of the first scenes. He shows up in the first 10 minutes of the movie when Gyllenhaal first goes to the first crash where he meets Bill Paxton's character. But I think what it's set up for is for, say, that to be kind of a vision of the future for Lou, Gyllenhaal's character. But at the end of the movie, he's not even remotely the same. In fact, he learns from a lot of what the schlubby, kind of disgusting Bill Paxton character is to disguise what he's doing, kind of. Because, let's be absolutely clear from the get-go, before we even get into the journalistic ethics. What he's doing is scummy.
Yes.
It's scummy. It's morally questionable at best. And Bill Paxton, I think, is that visually personified because he just looks like he'd be a scummy person. But Gyllenhaal is disguised. I think I described him in my notes that he fundamentally doesn't understand ethics and with the bias system is just obsessed with. I think I called him a walking business synergy meeting because that's what he is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he was. It's interesting because he talks about, I went to school online, and I learned that the cooperation and communication are essential keys to business success. And it's like I said in the beginning, where it is kind of like he is an alien, but an alien who was only given, say, business synergy, informational videos from the 80s, and then everything else was just movies and television.
Yeah, he definitely was very about climbing the ladder and always advancing his position, which is something I'm sure he definitely learned from business. But I'd say that he took a lot of inspiration from Paxton's character, but in the end, he far surpassed him in what Paxton ever was in the film. He had his own fleet of vans. He was running his own company. I mean, he was really at probably the top of the game in the Nightcrawler business in Los Angeles.
Yeah, at the end of the movie, he's basically dominated the scene. He's got his second truck. He has a staff, and it's a staff that, like I said, is modeled after this kind of prim and proper kind of go get 'em attitude, which is why I remember watching it and being confused. Like, I was confused that it didn't actually take place in the 80s. Because that's the kind of, it gives like a Reagan feel almost, like a corporatism feel to everybody. And Lou specifically, the way he talks like that. So that's kind of interesting. And then the way that they're dressed at the end is kind of like, you know, and then I love the constant ways that he brings up, like, you're being paid an experience. This is plenty of young people your age are going and starting it on the ground floor. And even in the beginning, he even, like, it's funny because he doesn't seem like he's lying. He's completely sincere the whole movie. And he has an inability, I think, to understand people. He doesn't want to. And yet he has incredible manipulation skills. Like in the beginning of the movie with the junk seller. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where he doesn't understand that, yes, it would be incredibly strange for the junk seller to hire him based on the fact that he's a thief. And then when his reaction to the junk seller telling him, I'm not hiring a thief, is not like, oh, okay, and walk out. It's, oh, yes, of course. Thank you. Like he learned something because he didn't understand that would be weird. You know what I mean? The
weird reactions he has to everything. It's not something a normal person would. He shows very sociopathic tendencies. I also noticed, I don't know about you, but I noticed like some autistic tendencies as well in his character. Especially in how he like interacted with other people. Is very detail oriented and very controlling, I guess you could say. Yeah.
I think you don't really learn a lot about like where he came from or anything like that. And in a certain sense, it isn't really important. But I think that he's probably one of the scariest kinds of people because I think it's a real kind of person.
Yeah.
It's the kind of person that's obsessed with image. It's the kind of person who is a leech on things that they don't understand. Willfully wielding powers that are way outside of their own range and yet still somehow gain a lot of success in it. But I think, it's his scariest performance, Gyllenhaal. I think it's his scariest performance, and I would even be argued to say it's his best, only because of how far he absolutely drives himself in this performance. Because I think this is something that you would see from much more of a method actor, somebody who's more famous for that presentation. Whereas Gyllenhaal, I think he doesn't get enough credit for the kind of effort that he puts into roles like this.
Not nearly enough. I don't think he gets enough credit in general for his acting. I mean, not just Nightcrawler, but his performance in
Enemy's great.
Scary.
Yeah.
I mean, he's versatile and he can really embody a role.
Yeah. No, but everybody else in this movie is perfect, though. I mean, this is kind of a perfect script, even though I have some kind of strange qualms with maybe the structure, because it feels like the scene in which he walks through the house, the murder house, should have been almost the finale of the movie or the third act. But then there's a kind of anti-climax, and then we have the real climax, which is, I mean, if I'm being honest with myself, I think a little over the top, like the car chase at the end. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a little over the top, but I understand where it's coming from. But other than that, I think the script is wonderful. I think it every line is memorable. Every line gives you something to feed off of. All the characters are complicated and are going through complicated scenarios. Even Rick is interesting. Yeah. Who, his homeless intern that he hires. Even he's kind of interesting because I mean he's also realistically very much like how Gyllenhaal is kind of this amplified reality of like a very out of touch person. Rick is like almost the opposite, a person who's like completely in touch and yet kind of ignorant in a lot of ways.
He's very much a pushover, and going back to that, talking about business, I think he reminded me a lot of like the new guy who just is too afraid to like say, "Hey boss, I don't want to do that," or "Hey boss, this seems wrong," and the boss will just boss them around, and
until the end.
Yeah, until the end. Until he became indispensable. Or dispensable, I mean.
Dispensable, yeah.
He was definitely the kind of person that Gyllenhaal's character was easily able to take advantage of.
Yeah. And transitioning from that to, I think this is a good way to transition to the music, because I told you to pay attention to the music because I think that it's very strange. The way that the mood of the music, particularly in two scenes. One, the scene when he first moves the body. You know what I'm talking about? When there's the crash and he shows up and he moves the body, which is completely unethical, and he does it only to get a shot, right? The music that's playing is almost uplifting or an enlightening piece, which is, I think it's great because I think it's specifically to put you in the mindset of Lou, where in this moment he realizes that he can do whatever he wants to get whatever he needs. And I think that the perfect culmination of that isn't that scene, but the scene when he essentially is culpable for Rick's death. And when he leads Rick to be shot by the person that they're chasing. And his death scene is that same type of music. It might even be the same piece of music when he's tearfully almost looking over Rick and saying, I couldn't allow you to be an imposition in the business anymore. Or, he says, and you do it again. I know you would. I know. He's almost sad about it. It's like he's firing an employee, which is precisely what he's doing.
Yeah. I mean, he's fired from life.
He's fired from life. Yeah. I mean, that scene is terrifying only because you know that you knew almost from the beginning that he was capable of that the whole time. But now it's just finally he has complete leverage. That scene at the end after that, when he gives the footage to, I forget the woman's name, the newscaster or the producer.
Nina.
When he gives the footage to Nina and they have that strange, and it's the same piece of music. It's like romantic almost, where it's like, you can have anything you want. What's your price? It's creepy. It's that perfect profile of both of them, like they're going to kiss. And they never do, at least on screen. I think overall, before we get into the ethics of it and, the interest, like just the details of the movie, I mean, it's incredibly accessible to like anybody. It's a fun movie, even if it's kind of scary, it's fun, his weird idiosyncrasies before they become scary or funny. Rick's performance is funny. The politics of the newsroom are fun and interesting to watch. So, before we start talking into, the journalism and stuff like that in the movie, if you haven't seen it, obviously we recommend it. And that'll be the case for pretty much any of the movies on here, even if I'll probably have at least one problem with everything that we watch. But yeah, if you're interested in Jake Gyllenhaal, which, if you liked Zodiac, you would be, I would check it out. But transitioning into the news media, obviously, into the journalistic implications of the movie, obviously, should probably say it up front that neither of us are broadcast majors.
Yeah, we're both multi-platform.
Right. So neither of us have worked in kind of that environment before. So we don't. I'm not even going to try to claim that it's not exact, that it's like realistic, whatever. I'm not going to say that because I don't think it is. But I think the big idea there is important, and I think it's fairly accurate. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the big idea there is very important. I don't think the minor details of what happens and what's going on in the broadcast room is super important. It's just that I think what they're going for with all the broadcast scenes is fairly universal for journalism. They're chasing headlines, and Nina's character doesn't really care about if they should be showing that, if people eating their breakfast need to see that. And you have that other guy. I don't even think he has a name.
He does have a name, but I just know him as Ted from Mad Men.
Yeah, so Ted, he's the one who's there questioning it. Should we show that? But
yeah, and it's a picture of a broadcast room in decline. Because it takes place in modern day, which I said is still surprising because I think the movie feels much more like an older movie. It's a newsroom in decline in that they're competing with far more things. They're competing with the internet. They're competing with social media, and they're still competing with print news. And that's why I think that the idea of creating news is incredibly important, and also like ratings, because that's all they're concerned about the whole movie. And I think it's a little simplified from like how it really is, but at the same time, I mean, they're not wrong about people being like, they're not wrong about it bleeds, it leads.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, people love crime.
That they say that in the movie. I mean, I think that she says that verbatim, that we like crime. When he's asking her what kinds of things that he should bring, it's we like crime. And then there's also the racial element to it, where, you know, he straight up ignores worse crimes, rape, for example, in one case, for car crashes or muggings in white neighborhoods and affluent neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's that one thing that Nina says. It's or I remember it's when he's asking her what he should bring or what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
She says, we're looking for like the newswoman like running around with her throat cut.
Yeah, she says, I think that it was, if you're looking for a message for our newsroom and what we're wanting, imagine a naked woman running down the street on fire with her throat cut open.
Yeah, something like that.
Which is true. I mean, it's a perfect summary of like what their message and what they're trying to get across is. And I mean, for example, the first thing that he turns in the carjacking outside the drugstore, it's one case, and the lead is carjacking crime wave. It's creating a story out of nothing, basically, out of just his footage. You know, there's no interviews, there's nothing. It's just you're creating a story out of one crime, which just produces more stories. You know, if there's no one more crime there, then it's a part of the crime wave. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I was thinking. This is what I was thinking about when I was watching it this time. Is that here's a person fundamentally that does not understand what ethics means. You know what I mean? He understands ethics in the context of a business, in what would produce the best business result, which is just unlimited growth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Building
another car, getting more employees, you know? So in this case, a person like that in a journalistic world where there are very clear ethics, you know, there's a rule book in a sense, would have no idea what to do, really. So he would be basing everything in his ethics on whoever his mentor would be, learning by example. And Nina, in this case, is the perfect case for that. You know what I mean? Because all she cares about is blood, really.
Yeah.
And she, like that scene near the end when he tries to leverage, and then he doesn't bring them the plane crash, right? But Bill Paxton's character gets the plane crash. The pure anger that she has towards him, and that's of course on top of him basically exploiting her for what we are led to assume are sexual favors. But even still, the passion for just staying alive in the newsroom based on carnage, I mean, it's something.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's kind of what the movie more or less is trying to say, I guess, is that when a person like this, because they do exist, I mean, I deal with them all the time. People that just sources and stuff. People that just fundamentally don't understand the process or the ethics of journalism, or they're just different, you know? And those people in a newsroom without proper guidance would be completely destroying the profession, more or less. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's not that Gyllenhaal's character doesn't understand ethics. Maybe it's that he doesn't like ethics. He doesn't care about them because they get in the way. That's the line in the movie. You know, him getting better, him growing, him making more money.
I mean, that's an interesting counterpoint because he says that in the movie. He says maybe it's not, because Rick says that he doesn't understand people, and he says maybe it's not that I don't understand people, it's that I don't like them. And I can see where that would mean that he understands the ethics, he just chooses to ignore them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that still I think that implication that he's learning how to like interact and manipulate people is necessary. So maybe he like knows that there are ethics, air quotes, ethics, but they're soft ethics, in that they could be immediately revoked in the service of higher ratings, bigger profit margins, things like that. I love that line at the end when he finally he brings them the footage of the murder house, or the horror house as they call it. And they have the legal expert in there. And Nina asks the legal expert, "Can we show this?" And she goes, "Legally?" And Nina says, as a joke, "No, morally. Yes, of course, legally." Because ultimately, she does not care.
Yeah. I think she actually kind of... I think Gyllenhaal's character never really underwent an arc in the movie.
No.
He stayed static throughout. But Nina's character seemed to be a bit more, morally
ambiguous.
Morally ambiguous, but she went full... Gyllenhaal's character completely changed her, and I think sapped away all the ethics and morals that she had in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean... And I think also that it's just, like what you said, it's a case of two personalities that are basically, like, one of them is Nina, has essentially more of humanity as you would recognize it than Lou does. But at the same time, Nina kind of just in the presence of that character that's ambitious and positive and synergetic all the time, kind of leads her down to a pathway that, like you're saying, kind of just by the end of the movie has the arc of, now I really don't care about ethics. Because what happens at the end of the movie is they publish something that he created. The car crash story and the car chase and the deaths of all those people at the Chinese store and everything in the climax of the movie. He created that by not calling the cops and telling them, endangering the lives of people. So at the end of the day, that's the ultimate moral, degradation on Nina's part. So I think you're right. That's interesting. That the real arc of the story isn't Gyllenhaal's character because, he learns more, but he doesn't really change. But Nina's character absolutely does in terms of being more accepting to this kind of footage. But then you could make the argument that in the beginning she still was. She still would have published that horror story at the beginning of the movie, but she's more she doesn't question anything anymore about him or about I forgot what they called them in the movie. His job.
Nightcrawler.
No, Nina calls like a scanner or something.
Oh, Stringer.
Stringer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that she has any qualms about it anymore by the end of the movie. And that scene I was talking about when they're on that profile and she's like, "You can have whatever you want, Lou." I think that's like perfectly kind of that completed arc, probably.
Yeah. Lou showed her what he's capable of. Like I said, I think a sociopath like him fits perfectly into that kind of job. And at first she might have been a bit hesitant about something like that, but Gyllenhaal showed her that when he has complete control of what he's doing, he can create exactly what people want to see. Mm-hmm. And she completely fell into his hands.
Yeah. I think I wanted to talk for a second about the system that would create the stringers, for example, because in an ideal world, a news organization, one that would be committed to truth and reporting what is important, which I don't doubt that that's what that organization is, but it's obviously lost its way. And I think that stringers, for example, only exist and can only be profitable in the hands of a declining news organization because they don't have the time or the money to pay for trucks to go out to every car crash and to all these places and like murders and rapes and stuff. They don't have the time and energy for that, at least until much later when the footage or the interviews wouldn't be nearly as marketable on television. So they have to pay these kind of smaller, not even near the amount that you would have to pay, say, a salaried camera person, freelancers. Mm-hmm. And that's what creates this I think that this is the case with freelance and the problem that the movie has with it in a sense. And I think you can make an argument that that's maybe a little problematic, kind of attacking freelance in this way, because I think it is kind of it's probably a bit of an exaggeration the way that this movie presents ambulance chasers, in that I'm sure that there are people that do this for noble reasons, You know what I mean? And that aren't psychopaths and aren't, greasy Bill Paxton people, But I think that the system that has created the downfall or the decline in broadcast news journalism has kind of created this freelancing, lack of ethical treatment thing that's in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a phrase I hear a lot. Something is better than nothing,
Sure.
I mean, the stringers, the Nightcrawlers, they're providing something. It's not totally ethical, but it's better than not airing anything. I mean, they have to air something, and it works. It gets people watching.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. I definitely agree with what you're also saying about it being a bit problematic, though, with how it paints freelancers. As like, if there's no, freelance reporter or freelance stringer in that movie who's like...
Mm-hmm. Everybody's kind of mean.
They're all scummy. They're all rude, standoffish. There's no freelance reporter who's more like Rick,
right?
Has like a sense of morality,
moral rightness. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But even Rick, he's willing to do whatever, really, as long as the paycheck is what he thinks it should be.
He's in the exact same position that the broadcast news station is. I mean, he needs the money. The broadcast news station needs the
story.
Yeah, they needs the story.
Mm-hmm. But it's not even really a story. That's something I wanted to discuss too. The things that he records are barely when you really think about it, at least in my opinion, a car crash is not really a story.
Yeah.
The death maybe is a story, but especially in a big city like Los Angeles, it's really not a story.
Yeah.
There's not really anything there that's particularly unique. There's no new perspective on anything. It's really just not a story, but they're creating a story.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot of artificiality around it all.
Yes.
Nothing. I got also in tandem with the music. Everything seemed a bit surreal, not a bit like fake. They were presenting a product to us.
Sure.
It felt like, and that coupled with the music that felt out of place, nothing in the film really felt truly real, and the absurdity of Gyllenhaal's character only heightened that because
I wouldn't use the word out of place for the music. I think it's in place very precisely. You know what I mean? Because it's in his head. Is kind of what I mean. Is that the movie almost takes his side in a certain way, or it's from his perspective. I can't think of a scene when you witness something that he didn't see.
He's in every scene. Yeah.
I can't think of something where he's not in a scene or you see something he didn't see. I can't think of something like that. So I think he to me, the music particularly, but also the entire thing being kind of surreal and weird is just his own view of the world. I also think it's interesting that the movie starts with still shots at nighttime of places people would normally be bustling in, but it's nighttime, so it's just black. It's just nobody's there.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. It's just that nice nighttime LA kind of thing. It's very cool. The movie looks great.
Yeah.
In general. The movie looks great.
I think just with the shots and the music, that to me seemed like it would have. That's what I expected to be in a movie whose protagonist is noble and someone you support and someone you want to get behind. But I don't. I guess out of place was the wrong word. It contrasted with Gyllenhaal's character in a way that made him seem even more. Yeah. More out of place, more like an alien.
Yeah. In a normal movie, when he's moving the body, there would either be no music or there would be it would be bad music. Mm-hmm. It would be foreboding of he's doing something bad, he's breaching a line. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But in that movie, it doesn't really do that because to him, it's oh my god, it's almost like a light bulb moment for him. I think. Mm-hmm. I was going to talk about. I forget what I was talking about. I was going to talk about. But yeah, I think the music. Oh yes, the cinematography. I noticed there's no shaky cam.
Yeah.
Which is weird because it's about a guy who shoots shaky cam footage.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's even weirder because, well, I also noticed that when he was shooting the footage, he was incredibly steady.
Mm-hmm.
If I were holding a camera like that, I couldn't do that. I mean, but yeah, there was no shaky cam footage.
Even in the car chase.
Yeah.
It's all very locked, which I thought was weird, and I was trying to maybe think about why. Like, why would they do that? Because it would be cheaper, and it would make more sense thematically because he's shooting shaky cam footage. But I'm thinking, like, in the case of this, he's presenting something that's fake. Like I said, he's creating a story from something that I think essentially, a lot of the time, essentially isn't a story. And the only time that there is a story, in the case of the horror house, for example, he ignores the real story. Do you remember at the end? I thought that was the scariest part of the movie. When he says, when Ted, I'm just going to call him Ted, I forget the character's name, or the actor. When he's like, they found drugs at the house where all those people were killed. You know, they don't actually have a baby. You know, it was a front. And then she says, like, we'll run that during the day. And he's like, this is the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it's kind of using that kind of photography, I think, is indicative of kind of the theme of a created, artificial, forced smoothness, artificial reality. Because in real life it would be gross. It wouldn't be smooth and, cool looking. It would be flat. It would be boring. It would be harsh. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, Gyllenhaal's character is also smooth and
he's
cool
a presentation
looking
person.
Yeah,
like I said.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, also with the music, you're saying it's from his perspective. We're inside his head. I mean, I was thinking maybe that the cinematography was very still because he's laser focused on what he's doing. He's no outside distractions. Anytime Rick says something dumb, he's just like, screw off, Rick.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's definitely very. He has one objective, and he's going to pursue it to its fullest and complete it.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall it's if you're looking for ethical portrayals of journalists, not one. But at the end of the day, I don't think that Lou would call himself a journalist. That's the other thing, is I'm not sure that he would call himself that. I think he's an opportunist. Mm-hmm. And with the case of like creating news, I think that opportunists like him destroy the news because what he's creating is not news. It's drama, which news can be drama, but it is news first. And then the drama comes from the news. But in this case, it's all drama. It's fabrication. Mm-hmm. All these like the stories that he creates. I'm sure that there are some of them that are, necessary and important, but a lot of the other ones just create this kind of false sense of, say, the creeping in of urban crime, as they say, that their viewers are more interested in urban crime creeping into white neighborhoods, into more wealthy neighborhoods and such. So I think this movie not only is a good representation of how people who don't understand journalism can be involved in journalism and near ruin it or kill it or just misunderstand it, and how the news is how easily the news creates false narratives.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's an opportunity to sees the system as a game he can play, and he knows how to beat it easily. I mean, like, he's able to just game the system. He knows, back to going how he doesn't care about ethics. I mean, he might understand that that people need to know about the news. People need to know that there was a shooting in their neighborhood, but a dead body's laying on the ground in the house.
Yeah,
that's what keeps people on the TV. That's
right.
What gets them watching, and he's able to see that opportunity and take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, like I said, I think he's an opportunist, and I don't think that he would consider himself a journalist because he says like he says what?
He's a businessman.
Yeah, he's a businessman. I think that he what's that line? He says He's like, do you want screen time? And he says, no, not me. I want to be the guy who owns the camera, who owns the business. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a power-hungry person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a control freak.
Mm-hmm.
Something interesting I was thinking about, saying that he's an opportunist. Do you think he's after more than just money? Is he after, like, validation or something else? Because I wasn't sure about that. Because as a sociopath, I'm not sure if he would really chase validation.
He's completely obsessed with his image.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time he ever gets frustrated in the movie, seriously frustrated, is when he can't deliver what he needs to Nina. When Nina yells at him and he does the thing for the trailer, when he shakes the mirror. But I don't think that he is I don't think he's interested particularly in money. I think he is interested in money only so that it provides him the resources he needs to reach his goals for power. I don't think that, because in business sometimes it's for money, it's for, a healthy thing would be researching money so that you could live. He doesn't really care. I think ultimately, even though he's making this much money, you know what I mean? Yeah. He's still living in the same one-room apartment.
Mm-hmm.
He makes all this money to buy vans and to buy the Camaro or whatever, or the Mustang. I don't think that even at the end of the movie, when he has like a flourishing business now, even then, I don't think that he cares about money. I don't. I think that he cares about money as a means to produce more content, to create more influence, which is something I was surprised by, in that what he learned from Paxton selling off pieces and bargaining with other people was that that's bad, because he doesn't do that.
Yeah.
He stays only with Nina for the whole movie, the same news company, which provides him the best source of power, because he builds on it instead of being a grifter.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Which I think is perfectly probably a great criticism of the system, where these people don't really care about the publications, they care about the paycheck. Whereas Lou almost is learning that, like, when that happens, the system doesn't even trust you. So the system will think of you a certain way. So if I'm a popular and important member of this publication, then they'll trust me, even though they shouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, they need him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
He's he's making what they need. I mean, they're at the bottom, and they're fighting to stay alive, and a sea of other broadcast stations that are clearly way farther ahead and higher up than they are. And I mean, I think
yeah.
Sorry, I just lost my place.
No, I mean, but the weird thing is that those places are up and doing better than the channel that Nina is at, because they're just producing more of the bloody content as opposed to really producing better content. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And it's this profit obsessed culture in every business, but particularly, problematic in the news, because, as I would argue as a journalist, is a necessary function of a democracy. You know what I mean? But when the stories aren't important, when the stories go no further than somebody died,
mm-hmm.
when the stories go no further than, some white people died in their house, when the story goes no further than that, then the news is failing, and it's purely drama, it's purely exploitative. And that's exactly what the Nightcrawlers and Gyllenhaal is exploiting in the movie, is that people seem to, or the news media seem to understand that they have a responsibility to give the people what they want to hear or are interested in, but don't seem to understand that they're also the gatekeepers of what people should be hearing at the
mm-hmm.
same time.
They're saying that somebody died, they're just saying that somebody died, they're not saying, here's what you can do to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
or why.
Why?
What's the bigger issue? Because people die every day. People die every
mm-hmm.
day. And people get shot every day in South Central LA. That happens. But the story isn't that somebody died. The story, especially in a city like Los Angeles, the story is, what's the police involvement? What's the response? Is there an epidemic? not just creating an epidemic because one thing happened. I think that really, to me, is the biggest issue. The biggest issue the movie brings up is that, they understand one responsibility of journalism in reporting things that the community feels are important, yet don't report and don't seem to find any kind of value in bringing what they believe to be important. Because ultimately, journalists are people, and people that live in the community.
Mm-hmm.
So they should be also understanding that things that they believe to be important and their news judgment goes beyond what people want to hear about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you think as members of the community, they'd understand that they would want to hear why it happened. They would want to hear how they can protect themselves. Mm-hmm. They would want to hear more than just dead person in their house. But I mean, again, they're giving the people what they think is important, boosts their ratings, gets them more money than, giving the people what they should hear. Like blood cells. I mean, yeah, there's an intersection of ethics and legality, and they are fully what's the word?
Yeah.
They don't really care.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Gyllenhaal's character, like I said, learns the full vapidity of this organization, in that they're not interested in the real story. They're not interested in the bigger story. They're interested in the small flame, or the big flame that burns out fast, which is the murder, the rape, the mass killing, things like that. And they don't go any deeper. So, yeah. Do you have any important last thoughts before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, I was actually interested in talking a bit about how I don't think he particularly gets any pleasure from the sexual relationship that he has with Nina.
Yeah, I guess we could talk about that for a second. Yeah.
I mean, he sees it as he's clearly using her, an attractive woman that he can have sex with, and she gives him what he needs to go to climb higher and grow his business.
I guess the question, is why? Why does he want it? Because he could still have because she needs him for her ratings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but he's the one that implies basically that if you don't give me sexual favors, I'm not going to give you this exclusive relationship with the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why does he want it? Is it something that he just thinks that that's what he's supposed to do?
Maybe it's that, and also that it gives him physical power over her too.
Right. I didn't think about that.
Because there's this one scene where he says, when he's going off on her, when she's not giving him $15,000 or whatever it is for that one story. He's like,
and he says, "Yes, I know."
Yeah.
Yeah, and he says, and for you to not talk back to me when we're alone together,
Yeah.
Implying that he probably wanted to do some weird thing in the bedroom, and she said no.
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that scene is just confusing, I think, or that relationship is confusing because all of it almost happens off screen. Their extra business relationship happens off screen,
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really know anything about it. You don't even know why he really wants it, other than in what you said, I think is probably the most interesting, that he wants business control over, because that's what he gets at the end of the movie with the exclusive relationship, but also sexual and physical power over her, which is, I guess, what he has at the end of the movie too. So that's interesting. I like that point.
I mean, he craves power and domination in all facets of what he's doing. Yeah. I mean, he has complete control of her at the end. He dominates her in every way. So now he can basically use her as a pawn, just like Rick, just like all the
until she's
interns.
No longer necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he actually foreshadows. He basically sort of tells Rick that if he doesn't, Or it's when they're waiting outside the house.
Yeah.
And Rick is saying that this is wrong, all this, and he's saying something about if you keep taking risks like this, you won't be indispensable or something like that. He's basically telling him that if he steps out of line, he's dispensable.
Yeah.
And to Rick that might mean being fired, but to Gyllenhaal that means
dead.
Yeah, dead.
Like, or at least the easiest possible way to get him out of your life. Because in Rick's case, Rick could incriminate him.
Mm-hmm.
Rick knows that he's breaking the law.
Yeah.
So the easiest and most clean way for him to fire Rick, in his mind, is for him to kill him, or at least be responsible for his death.
Mm-hmm.
In the case with Nina, if that would be the case, for her to die versus fire her or leave the company, then he would do it.
Yeah.
So that's Nightcrawler. It's a wonderful picture. It's terrifying. And if you're a journalist, particularly if you're a broadcast journalist, I would check it out, because beyond all the implications, even though I think that that's fun, beyond all of that, the movie is just fun to watch because it's incredibly. I enjoy movies that are like this, where your protagonist isn't necessarily the good guy, either your hero. In fact, there aren't really any heroes in the movie. So, I like movies like that. If you like movies like that, I would recommend it. I think that they're particularly scary and just interesting to think about from a character perspective, because most of the time you just don't get characters like that. And plus, Jake Gyllenhaal is very scary in it. If you don't have anything else, that'll be it for episode 2.
Yeah, that's all I got.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for listening.